Here's a great one. A successful host, Christina, when you put your first house on our platform, by the end of the calendar year, 12 months later, you're going to have 3 because the asset that you buy and the revenue that's created, you're not going to get it anywhere else. You can chase traveling nurses, you can chase insurance premium, providers in the midterm space, but that comes and goes. Right. So unless you have a big enough portfolio that can offset the demand as it comes in intermittently, our world, it's just much more consistent revenue because once they move in the house, they're going to stay on average 10 months, 9.5 months, 10 months. But we have some people that live 3 years. If you have SSDI money, like Social Security and disability, you get $2,400, a month, and you're paying $700 for housing versus $1,500 for housing. You're not going anywhere because it's the best option that you have out there.
I am Christina Suter, and this is the Real Estate Breakthrough Show, where we talk about the reality of real estate, the mindset you need in order to face the reality of what it is, and tips and tricks to get you moving forward in investing. I am your host, Christina Suter. Hey you, this is Christina Suter with Real Estate Breakthrough, and I have Quentin Wendt with me from PadSplit. We met at the Best Ever Conference, and we decided that since we're both so good at BSing it, that we just had to have a podcast together because we knew we were going to come up with something fun. But okay, that's part of it. But the other piece of it was that actually PadSplit to me is cutting edge inside of the midterm, long-term rentals. And I really wanted to bring this to you because it is a company that is specializing in doing a particular form of housing. And if you're in short-term rentals like I am, you're learning that short-term rentals are starting to get flooded in certain markets. I'm in Indianapolis, it's starting to get flooded. I'm moving my short-term rentals to long-term rentals. So I was at the midterm rental conference, and that's when I saw Quentin, I went to the Best Ever Conference right before I went to the midterm conference. So it's all one big conference in my brain. Right? So, right, Quentin? Right, we were talking about it's all one big blur after a while. And then you get back and there's an avalanche of emails and people waiting for you, waiting for the response. But I love what PadSplit is doing because it's a new niche in the market. So Quentin, why don't you talk a little bit about your history and how you got to PadSplit? Because you're not a professional real estate investor through all of your history.
No, I'm officially 2 years old. So I'd be in the kids' world. I'd be mumbling words and somewhat walking if you're a parent out there.
Yes.
So I am proudly out of diapers, and I own my first piece of commercial residential rental real estate. So I am officially a real estate investor.
Yay.
Dig that.
Woohoo! At 2 years old. Good job.
I am
Good job.
officially 2 years old in real estate, and I secured this route kind of like. First of all, thank you so much for inviting me. This is so cool.
Yeah.
I know that we hit it off right off, and it was just such easy conversation. And then you're like, "Hey, I have a pod," and I'm like, "Ooh, I have a pod," and then we should pod and pod and pod. But the conversation is really good. It resonated with everybody that I've spoken to, and I think that's the beauty of the space that we're in is that we share. And that's been like the most fun part of being my 2-year quote unquote masterclass in real estate is that people share in this real estate space. I used to think that it was like Lord of the Rings and everybody was Gollum-y and everybody was like, that's my deal, my deal, my deal. But in reality, it is, how can I help you? Who do I know that can help you? Because essentially we're going to be in the same network and you're going to help me one day. And that's the amazing part of the people I've met. All right, let's get back to it. This company, PadSplit, is where I work right now, and I had a really interesting route to get here.
Tell us.
I started at a school. I didn't know what to do. I was graduating, and my dad was like, "Hey, you are after 4 years, it is on your dime." And I was like, "Whoa, I should get a real job." So I went and found a job. Started working for Anderson Consulting. And those of you that are, looking out in that space, that's an amazing place. Only in the sense that the assumption is you'll figure it out. If there's anything I can say about management consulting firms is they recruit really, really well. And they find smart people that just find a way to say yes. That's my experience with it. And they find problem solvers. And that's the greatest environment to be kind of tied into. So I started out working for a management consulting firm. I found a nice little comfortable space in between technology people who could code and the business people that were, making PowerPoint slides and explaining what they did. I was kind of in that middle space, and I liked to talk to both sides. I wanted to always understand, "Huh? What do you do?" And then followed up with, "Oh, that's how you solve for it." And then trying to get somebody who's a coder to talk to somebody who works in a station or a customer service office, that is maddening to some. For me, it was a really, really happy place to be. So that's kind of the world I live
It's
in,
straight up
and,
translation. It is literally
yeah,
translating.
it is.
It is. They both, I think they're speaking English, but really they're coming from such different assumptions that you're literally translating from one
Yep.
world or one language to another language. It is.
The words are the same, but they're just not really talking to each other, right? So that's an amazing niche that ChatGPT cannot take away from you. So if you're nervous about kind of like where to find a job moving
Right.
forward, that's a fun place to be, is communicating between people.
Yeah.
So I went from there, and then I had an incredibly wonderful experience learning how different industries and different businesses work. And then that kind of led me to, I would like to own my own business. I wanted some independence. I wanted to not have to get on a plane Monday to Friday. My wife was pregnant with our firstborn, um, Dylan, and he's now 17, going to be 18 years old, about to go to college. So right at that point when she was pregnant, we decided, why not put some more stress on? We were moving at the same time, and then we bought a business at the same time. So we do things, whether we like it or not, in the most complex, crazy way to do it. But it was awesome. So we ended up leaving, working for a consulting company, and then I ended up buying a distribution company in deli meat. So for those of you that are out there, the world's finest deli meat product is Boar's Head. So I am still a huge fan. It's the only thing that my kids will eat. And so we owned a distribution and logistics business for 13, 14 years. So we sold that, and then I was at a loss. I didn't really know what to do with myself. A lot of time, a lot of OCD, a lot of ADD. That's not a great place to be. So
No,
took
it's
some
actually
time
really
off,
not,
and then
actually.
found a wonderful transition. One of my best friends is a early venture capitalist, and this company was in his portfolio. And he is a huge believer in what we're doing. And the paths just were like kind of really wonderful. So he said, "Hey, we're growing really fast. It's one of my favorite companies. What do you think about if you can come join and then look at it from operations and kind of
Mhm.
be old?" I don't know how else to describe it. Like, I came in, I'm like, "Why is everybody so young? How come everybody's birthdays, like, start in the '90s?" I'm like, "I don't get it."
Well, and
'90s
be
and
the
2000s.
old guy, right? That's why, like, the head of operations is because you're supposed to be the old guy with the experience coming in
I
going,
don't know.
"Okay,
I
this
don't
is
know,
how
but
you run a company because you ran the Boar's Head distribution
it
for all
was
those
it was
years."
fun. It was fun to come into so many exciting and really, really smart people. But essentially, a lot of people they didn't have a lot of reps with different companies, and that was kind of the fun part, is that, like, when you're seasoned as I might be, you just get more perspectives on things. And it was fun to just kind of, merge that in with really, really smart young people, and then try to figure out, how do we solve this massive thing that the company set out to solve? And like every day, the challenge was new. The challenges was We didn't know what the challenges were because it kept evolving because our company kept growing so fast. Like, here's a cool stat, and I'll explain what pad split is in a second, but people talk about, like, hockey stick
Mhm,
curves
mhm.
for growth.
Yeah,
I heard a stat which was awesome. It took us almost 2.5 to 3 years to get our first 1,000 units, which is a bedroom,
yeah,
because our platform, it allows for single room occupancy or rental by the room.
yeah. That's
And
and it's
then,
really good at it. It's
oh, it's amazing.
just
Like, we
nailed it.
we are we are the verb. If people say, "Hey, how do you do ride share in cars?" They say Uber. Well, how do you do single room occupancy at scale? You pad split it. And that's fun when people say, "Oh, I'm pad splitting my house." Yes, you are, baby. Yes, you are. So, like, that's fun. But yeah, we were solving for problems that we didn't know were there because we were just growing faster every single day. So my point about the hockey stick curve was 2.5 years, almost 3 years to get to 1,000 units. It took us just under 12 months to put on 1,100 units. We're growing by leaps and bounds every single day, and there's so many reasons for that, mostly because I think we're badass, and, like, if there's a solution for it, like, we're the best solution that's out there right now. But the other part that's really awesome is that we continue to listen to the users, and we're evolving, so we're not stupid enough, and we're smart enough to understand that we will evolve and stay kinda top of mind and best in class. And that's how we're gonna scale, and that's how we're gonna grow. So, I'll tell you about the company if you're ready.
I'm almost. So, IBM, right? There was
Mm,
two things, two stories in my head about IBM. One was I dated a guy who used to work for IBM. He said IBM used to stand for I've been moved because they moved their reps around so much. But that's besides the point. The other story about IBM was that IBM was, known for wanting to replace itself, constantly wanting to create the new technology and the newest edge in its field so that it was constantly making its own technology obsolete by bringing on new technology. And that was one of its agendas, one of its company's culture, right? And one of the things about pad split that I find is and again, I've only observed this from the outside and what you said and you were smart. You were smart. At the conference, he had two people that were active, current pad split clientele.
that's so good,
They were
right?
using, right?
How
They were using
great
the
are those
pads.
2 guys?
Yeah, they were great and they were knowledgeable. And one was, I can't remember his name, but he was the shorter of the two.
Franco,
Franco. And
he is awesome.
he is so in it. He's doing
Yeah,
this, he's doing that, he's got this, and this does that, and this does that. And you ask him about how to do this, he's like, oh no, that layout won't work. You want to do this layout, and you want to do that. And I was like, whoa, like he really has used the concept that pad split has created mastery over. And
yep,
he's used that to really create a series of successful ventures in his world. And we're gonna get to that. But I think it's important that pad split is constantly going, we are defining the field right now. We are deciding what it means to take a house, divide it up into individual doors, to lay over a platform that allows you to do that successfully. And what does successfully mean?
mhm, mhm.
And that's what you guys are doing on the software level, but you're also teaching it. It seems to me like you were perfectly willing to teach it to anybody who came up and asked you about it. So why don't you take it from there and go through that? What's the software and what is it that makes it physically successful?
I will, thank you for that, 'cause, and shout out to Franco Montano and
Great.
Fernando Corona.
Yeah.
Those are 2 of our, like, really early adopters, and I believe this, like, wholeheartedly, is that if I am explaining something to you, but then if you turn and speak to somebody who's a user, they have conviction. They've already done it.
Mhm.
And I am a big, big believer, and I've evolved into this to understand it's not for me to sell you on it. You have questions and concerns, and it's him because they've gone through that, hesitation, whatever barrier into action,
Mhm.
they've overcome that. And that's the piece that I think most real estate investors are seeking when they get to our doorstep.
Yeah.
I know I have a revenue problem with my short term. I know I have a revenue problem with my long term or my midterm. And then they get to us and they're like, okay, I hear what you're saying. How do I get there? What are the barriers? What are all the things that are fear driven that keep me from stepping over the threshold to become a pad split host? So, what is pad split?
Yeah.
We are a prop tech. So, in that sense, like we are a technology firm, it's a platform. So, we've actually gone out and created a marketplace and a platform, the 2 most synonymous things that I can throw out there that are where we want to eventually get to in terms of size, not necessarily, where they are right now, but Airbnb,
Mhm.
it's a platform that people can go to if they're looking for alternatives to hotel for vacation rentals, right? And in that platform, they handle 2 sides of a marketplace. One is the demand side. So I am the renter. I want to look for rooms in the city I want to go to at the price I want, and I want to find it. The other is the supply side. So I am the investor. I want to go and invest in a property that's going to create revenue in this city and yada yada yada. So in that sense, we're very similar to Airbnb,
Mhm. You do
because
both.
we take a single family property. You as the investor, we are just a platform. You buy an investment property. is a single family rental, and you start monetizing the rooms because you rent by the room on our model. So in the normal world, Christina would buy one house in Indianapolis that has 3 bedrooms and 2 baths, and she would rent it to one family for 1,500 bucks. In our world, we will tell you treat it like an Uber, monetize the space. So this is where Airbnb and Uber have a baby and they create pad split,
Yeah.
is that we monetize space along with time. So Airbnb does time, Uber does space. We kind of do both. And in that world, your 3-2 rental in Indianapolis would have 6 bedrooms. We would take the dining room, the den, and the living room. We would put walls up and make those bedrooms. In our world, we're trying to solve for 2 things. One, you're the real estate investor. We want to increase your revenue. And second world is you're the user, or what we would call the member, the tenant or the member, and they're looking for affordable houses really close to where they work.
Yeah.
Or really close to where they go to school, or really close to wherever geographical destination they want to be in. So instead of having to pay for a single family rental at $1,500 a month, they can pay $800 or even $700 to $1,000, depending upon the quality of the room that you're selecting. And essentially, you're saving $500 to $800 a month. As a young professional growing up, or a essential worker that is on an hourly rate and pretty much capped out. Where can you live in a safe area and get all utilities included, all furniture included in the area that you want to live in for $700 to $1,000 a month? You can't.
Right.
And that's the beauty of what our platform does is so we're the marketplace that allows for both of those 2 things to benefit. And that's the pad split marketplace that we've created, is real estate investors such as yourself, who essentially are in there for 2 reasons, right? You want appreciation and wealth, or you want cash flow. And sometimes you get both, and that's amazing.
That's great.
But most times it's either one or the other,
Yeah,
or
more
some
heavily
version.
weighted in one side or the heavily weighted on the other.
Yeah.
Yep, that's right.
Yep. So like, what going into it, what we are the magic unlock for right now is our biggest and best as an exit for single family rentals is better than the alternatives. Like if we had taglines, our math is better than your math. That's one. I love that one. The other one is like, we give multifamily returns on single family acquisition.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Christina, the
That's
investor, can
That's
buy
really
a
good. That's
single
really
family
good.
house. Right.
Yeah.
But now you can get multifamily returns on the same asset.
That's actually a really good description. That's the one I'm going to relate to the most, is multifamily. I'm checking which phone is beeping, and I think it's yours.
That's probably me, which is ridiculous.
All right. So multifamily returns on a single family, on a single family. And that was the beauty of the software. And then you also had Franco and you were having conversations with people specifically about, well, what about this? Like, I brought up one of my Airbnbs and I showed it to Franco and I went, this is what I'm doing. He's like, yeah, no. Like, no. The way you do this, lady, is, and these houses aren't going to, your house isn't set for this because you're too far down the pike, is you start to restructure the interior, right? Conversations about how you physically manage it. You don't really want to have a living room. Like, it's part of what the teaching is, right? You don't really want to have a living room, because really a living room encourages people to start creating community, which they may or may not get along with.
Community is interesting because we have a lot of folks so you could do it both ways. It's not. We have investors that have living rooms, and other investors that don't. And it's a matter of like, how do you underwrite it? That's a big one.
Okay.
If you buy it poorly, you need more rooms, because that's the only way you're going to cash flow. Like, we're still a real estate investment, right? Like, all money is made on acquisition.
Okay.
If you're a bad buyer, you're actually synonymous with a bad real estate investor. Like, it's essentially, I love this analogy, is that like, for single family acquisition for new investors, we're like bumper bowling, because our revenue is so high. It gives you more of a buffer for learning how to become a real estate investor, from underwriting to how much time it took for the general contractor, or I didn't take this into account for my carry costs. Our revenue goes from $1,800 to $800 per room.
Right.
So in a 6-bedroom house, monthly, you're yielding $4,800.
Yeah.
That's a lot of buffer for being
And
dumb.
that's really just to like repeat it so people hear it. So if you've got a
Mhm,
long-term rental, you're going to rent it as a 3-bedroom, 2-bath as a house, $1,800, $2,200 in Indianapolis, that range. And you're
mhm.
like, oh crap, that's not working. Like literally,
Not at 8.5%, Christina.
not at eight and a
Right?
half
Not at
percent or
8.5%, and
7.
you bought it in
Well,
17. It's amazing, right?
well, the last loan I just got was at 7.25. So it's not quite 8.5, but that last loan,
Right?
which I just closed, I think it was Monday before I flew
Yeah.
into the midterm rental conference that Monday morning.
Yep.
Um, but the point is to illustrate this in layman's simple terms to make it try to make it even simpler than you made it, which was very simple and understandable. You then reshape the interior so you now have more rooms. So not only
Mhm.
are you, like you could keep your 3 bedrooms and get your $800 per, right? That alone is going to give you higher rent because that's 16, right? We're at 16 plus 24. So you got 24 right there. I'm making
Mhm.
18 to 22 over here. I've got 24 over here if I'm doing per room. But if I start grabbing rooms like the den
Yes.
and I make
Yes.
that an individual space, now I start truly being able to enhance. Take 3 rooms, make them 5. Take 3 rooms, make them 6.
Yep.
Get rid of the living room, that gives me 6. Now I've enhanced 24 becomes now, right? 5,000,
Yes.
just under
So
5,000,
that's
4,800.
the beauty. Christina is the real estate investor. We're the palette. You can kind of paint your houses the way that work for you. Lead with the math. If the math doesn't work,
Right.
then this investment doesn't work, right? So lead with the underwriting. Where do I need to get to? There's some investors where they buy it and they keep a living room because they have a thesis that I want to create community in this space.
Right.
Our original direction or suggestions, best practices to host with couches in living rooms invite guests that are not paying members, and it causes conflict. So, in order to reduce conflict among members that don't typically know each other, we would always say, hey, just monetize the living room. Get $800 more per
Mhm.
month in rent by converting that into a living room. So you have common space in the kitchen, the laundry room, and the bathrooms if they share bathrooms.
Mhm.
Um, that was kind of the original thesis. And like all things, it evolves, right? The original Airbnb was an air mattress with a box of Pop Tarts and some cheery, Fruit Loops, and that's how they started the business. Now I go on Airbnb, there's like lazy rivers and saunas and cold plunge pools and foot massage things, but that's because that's the nature of a competitive marketplace that's evolved. And we are evolving too because we are an open marketplace. You, as the investor, have a thesis. You put it on our platform. You compete with everything else that's around you. Some do it on price, some do it on quality, some do it on furniture. I have a host that believes like minimum 8-inch mattresses, minimum 10-inch mattresses. I know if they sleep better, they'll stay longer. Amen, brother. Like,
You know what? He's probably
if
right about
that's what
that.
you need
Actually,
and it
actually,
shows,
actually, he's probably right about that. So let's
right.
let's go. So we've got the platform. You guys are willing to educate, right? So
Mhm.
I actually did not go into the Pad Split website where there is education, but there is.
Yep.
Yep. So tell us
So
what
we
you
have a
open.
sales team
Mhm.
that will legitimately like Sherpas. They'll hold your hand through the beginning all the way through the end.
Mhm.
If you are a high net worth individual, if you are, I'll give you. I told you about my story with the young lady during jury duty, right? Like she met me. She's like, I'm a copywriter, and I am scared about what ChatGPT is going to do to my industry.
Mhm.
I would love to get into real estate because I believe that is ChatGPT safe for
Right.
the moment,
Yeah,
right?
she's right.
So
Copywriters
for
are going to
her,
disappear.
it was like, I would do that if somebody would help me. And I'm like, we have an entire sales organization that'll walk you through it,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
And we have an ecosystem in our space. So like we work with partners that are realtors and wholesalers that give you deal flow.
Mhm.
Which one, which houses should I do? Our sales reps and our account executives, sorry, and some of our senior account executives. So they will literally walk you through how to underwrite a property, how to identify the best properties, all the way through. Here's some general contractors that we utilize, and they're vetted. They know how to put temporary walls across houses to get more revenue.
Mhm.
And some of them are magicians. Like some of them can put too many rooms in a house. I'm like, "Yo, slow down, Jack. Like I know you can put 12 in here, but I
Let's
think
not
I'm
do
okay with
that.
7." Exactly. So that's a piece that you'll kind of figure out the nuance of. We even have last mile providers that say, hey, when you're done, it's all about the picture. So like I hate to use the Tinder analogy, but like if you look like this or you look like this, somebody's gonna choose that room based upon the picture
That's true.
because that's how we shop, right? And all of those things are in our ecosystem, and we'll walk you through that, step by step to help you get on board. You get onto our platform, you go live, and then we teach you how to use the platform. Like our members are hourly employees typically. They make less than $50,000 a year.
Right.
So they work during the day or they work third shift. So like when they search, you want your rooms to be visible. So just because you don't want to help, somebody move in on weekends because you think, oh, I don't want to be available to do that, they search and move in on the weekends, right? So don't use our platform for the business that's within the house to optimize for it. And like we walk through all of those things from your point, from an educational and consultative perspective, because a successful host, here's a great one. A successful host, Christina, when you put your first house on our platform, by the end of the calendar year, 12 months later, you're going to have 3. Because the asset that you buy and the revenue that's created, you're not going to get it anywhere else. You can chase traveling nurses, you can chase insurance premium, providers in the midterm space,
Mm-hmm.
but that comes and goes, right? So unless you have a big enough portfolio that can offset the demand as it comes in intermittently, our world, it's just much more consistent revenue. Because once they move in the house, they're going to stay on average 10 months, 9.5 months, 10 months. But we have some people that live 3 years. If you have SSDI money,
Yeah.
like Social Security
Yeah.
and disability,
Yeah.
you get $2,400, a month, and you're paying $700 for housing versus $1,500 for housing. You're not going anywhere because it's the best option that you have out there.
Let's talk about your tenant, because I think that was really important. Like it was an eye opener for me. Like I have a B grade house in a B grade neighborhood with, it's like, and you look at it and you go, hey, that looks really nice. That's some nice furniture and it's da da da. And I target now. I'm moving it from short term specifically to target it to the midterm because short term's getting swamped in Indianapolis. And I was able to get midterms off of Airbnb, and now I'm not getting as many midterms off of Airbnb, even though I know that Airbnb's platform has a larger percentage that are now midterm that are booking off of Airbnb. But I really wanted to push it all the way over, right? That's how I got to part of how I got to pad split. But your tenant is a different tenant, and the neighborhood is specific. And I think once you embrace that, it's like, oh, ding, ding, like that. No, I get it. That's the final puzzle piece in going, here's the software, here's the education, here's your tenant, and here's your neighborhood.
Yep. So I'm going to talk strictly from an investor perspective because if I put it in these words, it sounds really crass. Revenue member, right, is who the member is. It's essentially workforce housing. So I love this term. Like there's a term called essential workers,
Essential
right?
workers.
COVID defined essential workers.
And it's important to understand essential workers, right? It's not workforce housing for a family, which I have done in my history. 2-bedroom, 2-bath. Mom is a housekeeper, dad is a landscaper. They have 4 kids, and the 4 kids live in 1 bedroom, and the mom and dad live in another bedroom. And they might have a teenage, maybe 3 of the kids live in the bedroom and the teenage son lives on the sofa. Right? Now that to me is workforce housing.
1 person, 1 room.
That's the biggest difference for us.
Yep. So we are targeting single employed, criminally background checked, income verified, single employee that is utilizing housing as a vehicle for financial improvement. Like that is our mission statement, is that these workers deserve the right to live in the neighborhoods that they work in. Right now, because of the cost of housing and the disparity between hourly wage versus rental cost, finding some place to work close and live close to where you work is really difficult, right? Because you're going to spend $20 to get there via Uber. You're going to spend an hour and a half on a bus or whatever the case may be. In our world, we compress that, right? So if you are working in a supermarket, or if you're working at a hospital, if you work at a hotel, or anywhere that's
Yeah.
essentially an hourly employee, those urban centers, or we're finding it happens in suburban centers as well. But if you want to live close to where you work, it is really expensive because it's desirous, right? People want to be close to the hospital. They want to be in the good school districts. They want to be in all the things that allow for great variety of restaurants, great variety of things. Well, all those things require a service industry to support them. Where are they living? They're not living next door to you in your HOA driven, like
Yeah.
minivan neighborhood.
Yeah. Yeah.
But in our world, we have investors that are taking essentially B plus all the way to C
And
class neighborhoods,
yeah.
right? So you as an
Franco in
investor,
particular liked that C minus neighborhood in particular. That was his
right?
little slot, right?
He can
You can do
find
anything.
value. He can find value in C all the way to B.
Hmm.
And he's great. Oh my God. Like he's on my board of directors in my own world of
Right.
real estate
Right.
of educating me.
Right.
And I'm like, help me understand this. How did you find such good deals? And like that's one of the greatest things that he's amazing with was sharing was like, this is what we do is I target high ARV neighborhoods where I know my financing starts. And then I just look for value in that neighborhood. And if I can get a great value, I know what my takeout financing is going to be. So I reverse engineer which deals make the most sense. And then because he's so well in tuned with like, what's a good one for parking? What's a good one for conversion? Which ones have rooms that are really easy to put temporary walls into?
Mhm.
And because of that matrix that he understands the business, he gets great deals.
Yeah.
Like he's still burning, in like Atlanta and Florida and places that like other people are like that. Those aren't burn markets, right? You can't find good deals in those markets. You either have to leave more money in the deal or you just catch a bad deal. He refuses to do that. So like with that being said, our revenue model allows your investors that listen to your show to burr,
Mhm.
right? Like they can go find deals that cash flow so well that they're getting to infinite returns much quicker.
Right.
Like that's the ultimate goal is that like I want to get all my capital out of this house and create a cash flowing asset with a consistent business model that allows me to build a portfolio of these that I create wealth, right? Like all you flippers in the world that are holder, you become buy and holders in our world.
Mhm.
And then you take out financing and then you move on to the next project. Like I love those guys because they know how to acquire property, they know how to renovate the property, they know how to do all of these things. But I'm just moving their turret to
Yeah.
aim at a different exit perspective,
That's right.
right?
And they do know how to do it, and they're actually built for it perfectly, like you said, because they already have the construction mindset. They already know they're going to buy something that is in poor shape, that maybe needs some systems to be upgraded. While you're there, you're going to, instead of creating this upper level open floor plan, like you specifically are not creating an open floor, you're
Yes.
specifically creating rooms that are individual that allows a
Yep.
person to have a bed and a desk and a little space of their own where they can get access to a bathroom or have their own bathroom. They have a kitchen which they can share. And then you can get what you need, and then you can go to work. Especially if you're a fireman, if you're a nurse, you're working 12 hours.
Yep.
You come back
Yep.
home and then you're there. And so it to me, it was a brilliant idea in that, and it's not a hostel, to be very clear, because hostels in Europe are for travelers. They're for
Yep.
teenagers and people that are traveling and moving from place to place. It is somebody who's going to settle in. They're going to be there for 6 months, 8 months, 10 months, a year, 2 years, 3 years. Now, I owned a 30 unit in Knoxville, Tennessee, and it was all studios.
Yep.
And we found and this is just true, studios have a much higher turnover than a 2-bedroom, 2-bath does. Right?
Oh, because that person is transitioning into something
Because the
else.
person's transitioning. They're either going up or they're going down, but they're transitioning inherently. So this is a version of a studio, but it's even less expensive than a studio because everybody shares that kitchen. So it gives even more funds, better better savings for the tenant and better return for the owner. And it's very specific. And it opened up my eyes to, like, there was an area I owned in called Garfield Park. And I sold the unit I had in Garfield Park. It was a unit that was deferred maintenance that needed systems repairs that I made look nice, which didn't fit the neighborhood.
Yeah.
Right.
So you forced appreciation in incorrectly
I
is
forced
essentially what you
appreciation
did.
incorrectly. See, if I had
Yeah.
known about pad split, then I would have gone and I looked at my tenants around me and I would have gone, oh yeah, there's a cook across the street, right? And
Yes.
his wife and his kid, and there's the lady down the way who worked at I think a coffee shop and a waitress. And like I'm like, oh, the housing they needed here wasn't the idea in my head. So I sold
Mhm.
mine because I'm like, this
Yeah.
doesn't work on the idea in my head. But if
So
I
using investment terms like force appreciation, that's a great way for me to try to explain it to somebody. In the multifamily world, in the single family forced appreciation for flipping a house, in the single family world, you put in nicer floors, nicer bathrooms, better countertops, shaker counts, like whatever the case may be, right?
Mhm.
That's how you force appreciation to try to compete with comps
Right.
so that you can sell your house for the most money.
Yep.
Retail. In our world, you're forcing appreciation by creating more revenue streams inside the house. Very much like Uber. Like I have 3 seats in this car. I am going to
Uber pool.
monetize the
Yes.
seats. Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's what you're doing with your house, but you're creating affordable housing in a location that's desirable for somebody who's working in that neighborhood and they're winning, right? They're essentially going from $1,800, and that's really the barrier that we solve for.
Okay.
Is Christina, the worker at Starbucks, um, she can't qualify for 650 credit score and let's just say
First
the
and
minimum,
last.
first in security, right?
Okay.
So at $2,000 a month for a studio apartment in Atlanta, it's like 1856 for a studio apartment. I don't have $4,000 if I'm making $50,000 a year. I just don't have it,
Mhm.
right? And like I have friends that make $100,000 that don't
It's
have,
hard for them to have
you know,
$4,000.
first and second, exactly. That 10% of their take home pay, saved. And that's crazy, but like that's essentially what we're solving for is that our tenant base, they can pay for the leased car, but they can't qualify for the loan.
Right.
Right. And that's essentially what we're facing for our housing structure right now is like rents are not coming down. There's
Mhm.
some compression going on, but like people who are affording houses are now getting into 3-bedroom apartments. Those 3-bedroom families are now being pushed down to 2-bedroom apartments. So it's all compressing, but the same amount of demand for affordable housing still exists. And what we're doing is our solution solves for that immediately and it goes fast. Like we've had conversions from Airbnbs into pad splits. They just put locks on the doors in
Mhm.
7 days.
Mhm.
So they went from an Airbnb considered distressed
Mhm.
at 40% occupancy to 85% occupancy as a pad split, cash flowing nicely. So like it's a really fast conversion depending upon what the units are. But if I were to buy it in my world like I did, I bought a distressed property
Mhm.
with enough space on the from the ARV or after repair value to what I acquired it at after renovation that I could take out and do a full burr
Mhm.
on the refi.
Mhm.
And that was beautiful because now I have a cash flowing asset that it's going to yield like 18 to $2,200 a month depending upon occupancy.
Mhm.
Um, I'll take that all day long,
Yeah.
right? In a single family rental, if I can get $2,200 of free cash flow, that's crazy sauce. Like, what do you guys call it? NOI after financing? Like,
Yeah.
I love your the acronym dictionary that I have on a Google Drive. I'm like, what is this
This one,
one?
this one. They
You
just
know?
said, GRM. They just said
Exactly. And like I'll
NOI. They
hear
just said,
these
ROE, or return on equity. They just say,
yep,
we do that
yep,
all the time.
yep.
We do it all the time. So
It's just money.
tell me a story that didn't work and tell me about a story that did work.
Okay.
Yeah.
Our platform is ever growing,
Mhm.
right? And the investors that come into our space, they're evolving and trying so many new things, which is kind of amazing, right? I'll tell you one that didn't work
Okay.
is we had investors, they wanted to get as many bedrooms as they could because on a P&L,
Yeah.
right, on a
More,
profit and loss
yeah, the more
statement, like
bedrooms,
7
the better.
bedrooms is
Yeah.
nice, but 12 looks great,
Yeah.
right? So like we tell them the standard guidelines is minimum acceptable standards is 8 by 10, 80 square feet per room, right?
Mhm.
And these guys had big, 12 by 10s and 10 by, and they reconfigured the house to get to as many 8 by 10s as they possibly could.
Okay.
It's like pigs get fed and hogs get slaughtered is the best way I just tried to describe it to these guys.
Mhm.
It's like, if you had left it at 7 bedrooms, you would have had a better experience.
Right.
And it was turmoil, right? Like the neighbors were like, there was no parking in the neighborhoods. There was just, it was not a good fit because they led with profit versus the operating, model.
Integrity. Yeah.
I'll tell you a one that did work.
Mm-hmm.
We have investors that are like, they're hospitality centric. So they were Airbnb investors before. So when they came to our model, they looked at the playing field. They went online as if they were a user. And that's my favorite. Like these guys went online, or these ladies went online as a user. And this is no knock on the guys, but like guys look at CAD diagrams. Women think about what the experience was, in my experience, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I love our women investor hosts because they bring this hospitality perspective, at least the Airbnb ones that I work with anyway. They bring this hospitality centric focus on what is the member experience. Because if that member's experience is really good, they're going to tell their friends about it.
Mm-hmm.
If the member's experience is really good, they're going to stay. And they get like vested into the house and the community that's there. So they had shared bathrooms in this house. It was a 6-bedroom house. And one of the things that they started doing was, in their previous life, they ran crash pads for airline and flight attendants and pilots. And they have like bunk beds in that model. It's kind of crazy sauce when I think about that. But one of the solves that she had with so many people into limited bathrooms was a shower caddy.
Mm-hmm.
That was part of their welcome packet. Was, hey, welcome to the house. Here's your shower caddy.
Mm-hmm.
We have shared bathrooms.
Mm-hmm.
So please take your stuff in and out of the bathroom.
Mm-hmm.
And that literally, I've told every single host about that story because nothing communicates communal bathroom than take your stuff in and out with you in a shower caddy that costs $3.50 off of Amazon.
Mm-hmm.
And that's changed the experience for a lot of other hosts because they're adapting and literally learning from the community. And that's one of my favorite ones because that pivoted the lens in which a lot of people looked at how do I run these things from a hospitality standpoint, which will always win. If the member has a great experience, there's a reason why Airbnb lives and dies by the rating, right?
Yeah.
Because the next person coming in has no idea what to expect, especially in our world of America's, housing options. Like people are not used to common space living or share rent by the room or living in the same house. But the ones that are staying, the economic value far outweighs, learning something new like shared housing.
Definitely. I mean, that's part of why I was excited about it, was because it's like, I'm like, oh, well, there's a whole new possibility for me to actually buy this next, the next door I'm looking at buying. Like, do I literally just move a couple blocks? Well, not a couple blocks. It's probably about 12 blocks down from my existing holdings. So it's easy for me to continue to have it in the same neighborhood. It's a more working class neighborhood, right? Versus maybe a mid-class family neighborhood, Garfield Park, that area. And then I divide up my rooms and then I have this higher return. And if I truly convert back out again, then I solve one of my problems, which is when I'm running out of capital. How do I continue to purchase and have flow coming in? And so I'm excited about it. As you know, I'm excited about it.
I love that. That, like, what you just talked about, that's an experienced investor problem, right? It's funny because, like, if I'm a high net worth individual and I've never had the purpose of building a portfolio, I don't know the value of the capital that it started. Right. So if I start with $100,000 set aside and I want to deploy it, the race is how much assets can I own at the end of the day with the $100,000? If you buy poorly and you buy too expensive, you're leaving 20% in. Then you got to do the renovations, and then you took out, all the down payment, all the commissions, all of the concessions, all of these things. You could easily leave $100,000 in a project. Easily, right?
I do right
and
now.
You own the asset,
I do right now.
Right? And you own the asset. You're like, great, I have an asset that's yielding $300 a month, and I put $100,000 into it.
Right.
That's crazy sauce, right? And that's literally that's the biggest barrier of entry for real estate investors when they start out, is if they don't have somebody who's coaching them, guiding them through those decision making, you don't even know that you're going to end up in that bad parking spot, right? It's like your money's parked. You can't get it out. You can't refinance it out. There's not enough equity. You're waiting for father time
Right?
to appreciate this
I
house
am.
where the math starts making sense, where you can pull equity out. Just if there's anything that I've learned, reverse engineer the math. Like just understand how you put money into a project and how you're going to get money out of the project so that you can go do it again. Like if people don't know what BRRRR means, like put in Google BRRRRR, right?
It's
And
really
like
hard to
David
Google.
Green talked about it, all the bigger podcast guys talk about it. It's just the investment strategy that says I'm going to buy it, I'm going to rehab it, right? I'm going
Rent
to
it,
rent it out, and then I'm
and
going
then
to refinance
refinance
it.
it. Yeah.
And then you're going to repeat,
Then you're gonna
right? And that's how you build an asset portfolio. But imagine with every one of those things that you're spitting out, instead of $300 a month, you make $1,000 a month.
see, and that is important because it's the financing. So I mean that's part of why I leave $100,000 in my houses per house. It's a B grade house with B grade neighborhood. I'm doing Airbnbs, or I'm going to do the midterm rentals by the insurance. It's probably perfect for my house, my houses, because I want to house families. 4-bedroom, 2 baths. I have 2 1-bedroom, 1 bath. They're great for nurses, and so I've got some good units. And as far as that mix goes, but years ago, the reason why I own short-term rentals and mid-term rentals is because I started in long-term rentals 30 years ago. And what I learned about long-term rentals, because I went from single families to multi-units to fourplexes and multi-units in multiple different states, right? So that was the portfolio I owned in 2006 at the top of the market, right? And we had that conversation at the table, like, and all SHIT hits the fan, right?
Yep.
So, and what I took away, not so much from the downturn, but what I took away from the tenants, the long-term tenants, was the tenants trash toilets, teenagers, right? Ticks, right? The ongoing frustration of having long-term tenants. And I went, enough. I'm going to buy back in again, but I don't want to buy into long-term tenants who are going to degrade the value of my unit with the dogs and their da-da-das and da-da-das, right? And then they call the health department on me, and I have to fix their carpet. I have a whole story on this. Literally, I own this 18 unit. Yes, it was an 18 unit. They allowed pets. The lady calls the health department, doesn't call management, doesn't call me, calls the health department and says, my carpet is all messed up. I'm not pissed about this at all. This is now 20 years later. I'm still pissed about it. My carpet is all messed up. And then she calls the apartment. She walks in. She shows them the apartment. Sure enough, her carpet is ripped up with her 2 German Shepherds.
Yeah.
I'm like, we didn't give you a unit that had big holes and rips in your carpet. I promise we didn't do that. And the health department says, so sorry. You're, as the owner, and allowing pets, this is considered reasonable wear and tear. I don't agree with them.
Stop.
You are responsible
Is that really the case?
for replacing the entire carpet in the unit. And I did.
And there goes your year's worth of revenue.
And there goes a year's worth of revenue, because that's how expensive an apartment is. Carpet is in a 2-bedroom, 2-bath. Okay. Yeah. So now I gonna buy back in again. I'm like, I don't want this. So I buy Airbnbs. Yep. I want access to my unit. I want to be able to rehab something if it breaks. I want to be able to maintain the quality of what I've purchased so that it continues to appreciate without all the deferred maintenance being behind it. My best example is I have the German Shepherds on one story. My other story is I get a text from my property manager in the Airbnb and says, hey, this lady just tripped on your stairs. And I'm like, oh shit, she tripped on my stairs. Like, oh my God. She says, she punched a hole in your wall. She wants to know how she can pay for getting it fixed.
Yeah.
No trip and fall hazard, no lawsuits, no health department. It is, how can I be a responsible guest in your Airbnb unit, right? And pay for it being fixed. Now, pad splits, maybe they don't do that, but they will be gone in 10 months. And you actually can choose to go in and fix and maintain what you have, because now you have access because they're going to be leaving. In Southern California, we have people who literally will stay for 10, 15, 20 years, And
Yeah.
they're like, "Oh, I want a new carpet." I'm like, "Okay, I'll give you a new carpet, but you have to give me access." "Oh, no, we're not gonna give you access." I'm like,
Right.
"You asked for a new carpet. I need to see what you're talking about."
Right.
So it just feels to me like my experience has been in owning short-term rentals that I have more access to my own assets and being able to maintain the quality of those assets than I ever
Oh, that's
did as a
brilliant.
long-term renter when I was
Christina,
long-term
that's
renting.
brilliant because I've never looked at it from that lens
I
of
know.
access for the owner of the asset,
Yes,
right?
I know.
Even though in our world, it's so normal because of the way our platform is designed.
Mhm.
The renters, the members, they have an app where they can submit maintenance tickets. And the value to that I've spoken to real estate investors is that I don't have to wait 30 days and 60 days when I do house checks to hear back that I had a drip under my sink and now the entire floor is
That's
warped
right.
and my downstairs
That's
is
correct.
ruined.
Yeah,
He goes,
yeah,
I will get a text on a Tuesday. The expectation is 24 hours later, I respond back. In 48 hours, I address it and I fix it.
yeah.
So, in that sense, he goes, I de risk massive problems because I get really quick responses from members.
Yeah.
The toilet's leaking. It's annoying to have the toilet leaking. So, we'd like it fixed quicker, though.
Sure.
So, you have much more visibility into it.
Yeah.
Like, those are the kind of things that I think members having our model as a hybrid between short term and long term, and everybody's saying midterm, right? That's like the
Midterm.
most popular
Most
thing, that
popular.
because everybody's fleeing the other two things that are not cash flowing.
Yeah.
So if you're fleeing short term and you're fleeing long term, where are you meeting? You're meeting in
In
the
the
middle
midterm.
somewhere,
Yeah.
right? And so like our version has always been under that model of midterm, but in reality, we're long term midterm.
Yeah.
Like
You
people
have the
say
long-term.
midterm is more than 30 days, 31 days. Like our average tenure is 9.5 to 10 months, and people stay as they're transitioning to wherever they want.
Yeah.
Other people stay permanently because it's the best option that they have. And the investors who just they understand who we are and what we are, instead of trying to overlay what your hopes are on my model,
Mhm.
if you just accept it for what it is
Yeah.
a cash flowing alternative to both of these things that don't work.
Yeah.
If you bring the wrong asset, our exit doesn't work. If you bring the perfect asset, it's an amazing model, right? People can build generational wealth through cash flow in our model. It's
Perfect.
just it doesn't like we're not immune to the universal laws of real estate. Like during the winter, guess what? We have some seasonality because renters don't move when it's raining and cold out. Like they don't move during Christmas season. They don't move during Thanksgiving. It's just the nature of the beast.
Yeah.
So we'll see a decline in terms of brand new bookings, but it's never to the point. We're never as bad as everybody else. Same thing for like rental revenue. We have 7 bedrooms in a house. You'll never have a $0 month.
Yes.
You may have 3 vacancies while people are moving in and moving out, but you're never going to have a $0 month because 3 or 4 of those rooms are always
Always
filled,
filled.
right? So it's when I went to the MTR summit and I saw this
Mhm.
of
Yes.
people talking about contracts.
Yeah.
It's a constant chase for the next contract.
Yeah. That is a
In our world, you can diversify your portfolio with a pad split that just makes your cash flow much more consistent. And like one of the favorite stories I tell all the time is I think I told you is I met a gentleman in Kansas City. He continues to do flips and holds for high-end houses because he wants the appreciation.
Mhm.
The rents in those areas are almost break even.
Mhm.
He built more portfolio and literally diversified his
Mhm.
portfolio once he heard about pad split because the cash flow allows him to keep the A property, the A class neighborhood for appreciation. He's
Mhm.
like, I got a great deal. I've got 600,000 in equity in this thing. It only keeps going up. I'm going to go ahead and find a way to keep it.
Mhm.
And I'm doing that by buying pad splits that over generate
Income.
cash flow.
That's right.
And it allows me to keep that asset at break even and profitable across my platform, but I'm getting way more appreciation from this house.
Yeah.
And he goes, that income, when I unlock that either through a HELOC or refinancing or takeout financing, I can then go buy more assets and continue to build wealth.
Beautifully explained.
That's the win.
That's the win. That's the win. Okay. Beautifully explained. If people want to get a hold of you, they want to know more about pad split. How do they do
Yep.
that?
They can just go to our website. They can go to padsplit.com, PADSPLIT.com, and there's a link for become a host, and then you submit some questions. You give your contact information. One of our amazing account executives will reach out to you, schedule time with you, and then go down this path of holding your hand,
Yep.
explaining our model in your markets, and then they just get started. And then you join our community, which is another beautiful thing that we have and that we're developing is our host community, like all these other real estate communities. It's just a knowledge base and a list of people that are actively doing the same thing.
Yeah.
They're making money while doing something that is so needed. I joke that it's pinky up time at a cocktail hour. Yeah, I do affordable housing. I don't tell you that I make 3 times as much income on that house, but yeah, I'm into affordable housing. It's an amazing byproduct where like both sides win, and in today's marketplace, as a business owner and entrepreneur, very few situations where both parties win.
Yeah.
Somebody's usually overwinning, and that's just how the nature of it works. But in our world, workers get more affordable housing options presented, investors get more cash flow and revenue, and they can live, and they can coexist, which is it's pretty unreal, and it's pretty it's a rarity, I would say. Right? I can't think of the best word for it, but it's rare in today's economy where both sides are winning.
Beautifully said. This is Christina Suter with Real Estate Breakthrough. I am your real estate investment advisor, helping you find your purpose through the vehicle and financial freedom of real estate. Thank you so much for being on this show. Tune in, guys, on YouTube, Apple TV, Roku TV, and Amazon, and a variety of other podcast stations. And I will have another great guest for you in 2 weeks.